When you come home from a long day's work and you turn on CSI and you're hearing all of that dialogue beautifully, brilliantly portrayed through your speakers while gunfire is going off and people are running across a train platform, that is all very, very intense post-production that is very costly and requires a certain amount of expertise that not a lot of people have. And so to say that that's not a job that a blind person could potentially go into is woefully robbing people of an opportunity.
This is the Penny Forward Podcast, a show about blind people building bright futures one penny at a time. I'm Chris Peterson.
I'm Liz Botner.
And Mo Carpenter is not able to be here this week because she is traveling home from the Washington Council of the Blind State Convention where she's representing Penny Forward. Today we have on with us Kevin Reeves from IC Music. We're going to hear about Kevin and his blindness and IC Music and how the company got started, what it offers and what it does, and lots of other stuff. So let's just get started with that, shall we? Kevin, thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
Start out by telling us, if you would, about yourself and your blindness.
So I'm totally blind since birth, and it was optic nerve atrophy. It's not technically one that when people talk about fixing the eyesight, this is pretty much one that is not fixable. And, that's okay by me, but it's optic nerve atrophy. I was told, the optic nerve is like the size of a pencil. Mine is the size of a pencil lead.
What is IC Music and how and why did it get started?
IC Music is a online and in-person training facility for blind students wanting to get into audio production. That includes recording, post, editing, mix, master. And so we offer classes in Reaper, Pro Tools, Logic. There are a couple of classes for sighted folks on the Studio One side of things, I believe. It started for blind people, really, but I think as the mission statement increases and Byron Harden kind of pushes the vision, it's going to try to be way more inclusive to sighted, blind, any kind of disability. There's been talks of incorporating some different things. We're eventually getting into teaching music licensing. I think there is now a curriculum up on the website for that. We have students and instructors from around the world, and some of us travel to Byron's studio in Chicago where we teach hand over hand, where we're helping them set up equipment, and we are showing them the ropes of all of that stuff. And then there are other times, more often than not anymore, that is remote. And how it started was I was at an NFB convention, and I got a call from Byron and ended up speaking with him for like 4 or 5 hours that day in the hotel. I didn't even go to any events. And he was looking for somebody to train him in Pro Tools because he had lost his sight for a second time. And so he was working in Logic to record music, and he could no longer work in that space anymore because his eyesight became, non-existent again. And that's a story all in and of itself. But he came to me wanting instruction. I taught him. And in that process, he said, look, I'm trying to set something up where we can provide a platform for folks to come in and get individualized training. And he called it the MPEP program. He had this desire to put something together where this was available, because a lot of times in audio production, especially if you're going through college, you're thrown in a world where doesn't matter if you know Windows and JAWS and NVDA and whatever it is, you're getting thrown in a world where maybe they're completely all on Macs and they're running something completely unfamiliar like Pro Tools. Well, you have a million cards stacked against you, unfortunately. You're learning an OS, you're learning a screen reader, you're learning the software, and you're learning the physics of how to record. And so this, for a lot of students, took the guesswork out where they could get training before they get training, in a sense. Like, we start them on the path of, this is your OS, this is VoiceOver, this is how we work in Pro Tools. This is what all of your sighted counterparts are going to want you to know. This is what they're going to be looking at. And we're giving you the exact non-visual version of what they're looking at. And so we've been able to get folks into a Pro Tools program where they said, we don't even think blind people could possibly do this. I mean, we don't know how they can do it. And then we get the student in there after we've trained them, and they're like 25 chapters ahead of their entering students for that year. So, that's where it all kind of started, was in the academic realm, where it was like, well, we need to get students prepared for Full Sail or starting their own business or whatever it is. And as blind people, they're kind of shut out in a way. If the staff of that school are not aware, they'll just assume, well, blind people can't really do this. I mean, it's so visual, which it is. Correct. But it's also auditory. And so we've been able to do a lot of advocacy. We're showing the work by turning out folks who come into situations with sighted people, and those folks are now competing on the same level. Now that's expanded into Windows and Reaper and Logic and all the different things, because we realize now that we can do the remote thing and make it affordable. We've gotten just so many folks from different walks of life. There's a gentleman that trained with us for just a couple of hours, and he came in and literally booked a brain pick session with me. It was like, I just need I don't need a curriculum. I want 4 or 5 hours or whatever to just pick your brain, see some things. I'm messing with this myself. And so we were able to level him up. And he had come out of, I believe, Afghanistan. He was blinded in Afghanistan. We had another one who came out of Iraq, I believe it was, and was blinded. And they set him up with a studio, and we trained him as well. And there's just all kinds of folks. I trained a 13-year-old genius prodigy. Derek had the opportunity to train Marcus Roberts, who is a very consummate, world-class blind pianist. I mean, the guy is just something to behold. And he has a CV a mile long of people that he's played with, and he has the respect of jazz musicians everywhere and in our blind community as well. And Derek Lane had the pleasure of being able to work with him. So that's essentially kind of what we're about. And there's so much on the horizon as far as things that people are working on. I mean, we've got Clarence Griffin in there teaching DJ. I'm putting together a audio production and songwriting curriculum. There's just so many things that we can do that folks are interested in pursuing.
You did a good job of talking about some of the students you've had and maybe some of their successes along the way. I'm curious to know what some of the challenges were in getting IC Music started.
So when Byron originally talked to me, he had this vision, and we would literally sit with one of his cousins who would help us design a curriculum. And so the whole thing was hacked together lovingly with tape and twine at first. It was like, okay, so we've got a studio at Byron's home, which is beautifully set up. We've got this curriculum. He's got ins with VR. And so he started working his magic. And we had a couple of students at first, and then there was some talk about a contract where he had started in the state of Illinois as a vendor. And if you do anything in blind VR, all these weirdo buzzwords like, are you a vendor? And, all of this stuff that happens. And so he started there, and our first 2 students were from Illinois, and they were really interested in pushing through a bunch more students. So we were making the plans. I had actually moved to Kalamazoo because it was closer to the train, because I knew that this is what was going to happen. And Byron and I were very much talking about this, and a contract got yanked. I don't know the ins and outs of this, but there was where you get personnel change in a VR. And then once personnel changes in a VR, it's as if the one thing that you were doing before no longer exists, or oops, we forgot about that, or no, we don't want to do that anymore. That's essentially what had happened. And so there was almost 2 years that we saw nothing. music is not just some blindy hobby. And the problem in our community is that, there's this unfortunate thing that happens with blind musicians and blind audio engineers, that folks kind of get relegated to this idea that, well, I'm obviously good at hearing things, so I should go do audio. Whether or not somebody even has an aptitude or a want to do that, they feel like, well, this is pretty much all I can do. And so what ends up happening is it becomes this kind of, we know people joke about the whole, like, blind guy in the mom's basement editing audio. And unfortunately, with that whole thing comes VR being influenced by that part of that culture. And that's what they think they're funding. Am I really going to fund a blind person in a basement making music? How does that even get jobs? Because that's what they're seeing. Like, look, when you come home from a long day's work and you turn on CSI and you're hearing all of that dialogue beautifully, brilliantly portrayed through your speakers while gunfire is going off and people are running across a train platform, that is all very, very intense post-production that is very costly and requires a certain amount of expertise that not a lot of people have. And so to say that that's not a job that a blind person could potentially go into is woefully robbing people of an opportunity. Because I think the problem with music and art is that we have sensationalized it, that, oh, so Kevin Reeves, blind musician, what are you going to do? Go on The Voice and be a star, right? That is literally the unfortunate mentality that a lot of blind folks end up with, when a lot of us really want to be serious purveyors of our craft and serious business people when it comes to audio production. I don't care if you're making beats with Dr. Dre. They are a business, and they are a large business. Jay-Z said it best: I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman. And so what we've been trying to portray to a lot of these folks is that, the arts is vibrant, and what we expect out of our students is that they have to be able to put in the work, because we get them to Full Sail, or we get them past learning Pro Tools or Reaper or whatever, and we get them into their small business. It's up to them to go get those things, and we have to instill that in them. And Byron has a whole course on that he does for a lot of these folks. And so music for a blind person is not just some custodial Stevie Wonder, shake your head back and forth kind of subculture. It's people who are very serious. I mean, you look at guys like Malik, or guys like Raul Midan. I mean, the list goes on and on. These are people that, whether they're known or not, they're very serious people. They're very serious about their craft. And sometimes that's what happens with the disability community, is we don't get taken seriously. It becomes infantilized. Like, let's cry because the blind guy played Star Spangled Banner on piano, and I'm going to cry in my coffee and say that blind people can do everything, but we'll still deny them jobs, right? So it's that whole thing that we're trying to, as musicians and business people and audio production guys, to really kind of say, no, this is not what this is. We are serious about what we do, and we are serious about showing others that they can and go out and get those opportunities as well. And so that has really been the challenge a lot of times, is perception.
It's surprising to me because music and audio is, as you pointed out, it's in TV shows, it's in all kinds of different productions, but it's also in advertising, it's in education, it's all over the place.
Yep. You're absolutely right.
I think, though, that just goes to show that misconceptions, they exist everywhere. Music is no different, right?
Yeah, it's a struggle for a guy like me, because I get it from both sides. I mean, when I tell people, especially in certain blindness circles, certain very serious blindness circles, that I'm a full-time musician, the judgment creeps in. There's judgment creep in there. Like, oh, really? Well, so like the disabled musician kind of thing? I mean, because that's what gets assumed by other blind people too. And what they don't know is that they're talking to a guy that is as anti-inspiration porn as you can get. and I don't take myself very seriously, but I take my art very seriously, and I take the way it impacts other people very seriously. And so we get it on that side, and then we get it on the sighted side, where it's like, well, shouldn't you be wearing glasses and playing? How do you only know one Ronnie Millsap song, right? So these are things that are very common in our world, and it is an unfortunate thing about perception. And that's what we try to do at IC Music, where, we're linking like blind and sighted engineers and blind and sighted people to collab, and we're non-custodial about the whole thing. It's about inspiring one another without all the inspiration porn. It's about inspiring one another because that person is inspiring whether they're blind or not. We are all inspiring to someone. And, a lot of what I teach in my classes when I teach audio engineering is that your job is not to push buttons and make the things sound good. Your job is to honor the art of the person that's sitting at the other side of that table or the other side of that Zoom call, the person that's clicking send on those payments to you. You have to honor those people. What is it that they're trying to do? We always try to do these things about just like elevating further than what it is, the thing that it is we're doing. And so especially in the blind perception realm of things.
I really try not to rant when we do these, but I hope that there are VR counselors listening to this episode. And this is a theme that goes across many episodes that we've done with people in different professions. George Wurtzel, the Subaru guy, when he was on, said, there's nothing wrong with raising chickens and selling eggs if that makes you a living. That's not something we should look down on because we all eat eggs, or most of us do. I just met someone that doesn't like eggs but does like bacon, if you can imagine that.
Okay.
And when we had Peggy Chong, the blind history lady, on, she said the same kind of thing, that door-to-door salespeople and other, piano tuners and other kind of stereotypical blind professions, these people put their kids through college. They kept their families fed and kept a roof over them, and sometimes, gave them a pretty good life. So I don't think that any of us should be looking down on any kind of a profession that somebody wants to do. There are blind diesel mechanics out there, and there's a lot of vehicles that run on diesel that need those diesel mechanics, or we wouldn't be getting our Amazon packages. And by the way, there are blind people that are working at Amazon loading those packages onto trucks or delivering those packages off the trucks. So, VR counselors, come on, you gotta really think big here. There's a lot of blind people that you could be putting into jobs that maybe you're just assuming a blind person can't do that job when that's really what they're best suited to do. And it's doing all of us a disservice, and particularly you, when placing people in jobs is really your job. So I hope you're taking this to heart. And I'm getting off my soapbox now. Liz, you have another question?
I do, but I just want to kind of continue on with my soapbox on that and just add to what's been said and agree that, yes, if you get a client that comes to you and says, I would like to pursue XYZ thing, your job is to figure out how to help that person pursue X, Y, or Z thing. If they don't know, then your job is to help them figure that out. But that does not mean push A, B, or C down their throat if they're saying to you, that's not really what I want. Helping them to get a job and figure out what they might want to do takes both parties. It's not just one-sided. But absolutely, if someone comes to you and says, you know what, I'd like to raise chickens, you know what? Your job is to help them figure out how to do that.
Yep. And, I've always thought we play at this game of job simulation sometimes where we say, well, there's like a work experience thing here. Maybe you can go do that, see what you think. I think somebody should set up a facility for the blind that is literally every work environment you could imagine. Like, so in my hometown of Traverse City, Michigan, there's a place called the Career Tech Center. And in this building, there are like 9 or 10 or 11 different trades. And so the students can sign up in high school. They say, oh, I'm going to go into daycare. And there's a daycare thing they can do. They can do a flower shop. They can do a restaurant, do wait staff, work on cars, work on houses, things like this. And it's part of their credits. Blind people need this not for credits, but there are so many blind people that you look at them and you go, what are you good at? I don't know. And then they go out into the real world and they feel helpless and they feel lost. So why not have a facility that you go through, and it's like VR funded, and you go through these different weeks. And if you don't know what you want, you get a chance to do every single thing. And it's an adventure. So you do like data entry and you realize immediately, this is not my thing. I don't understand a thing about this. And you do it for a day or you do it for whatever, you get assessed. I don't know how any of this works. I'm just an ideas guy. Then you go into food service. You learn how to serve popcorn and Cokes and whatever. All the non-visual ways of doing this. The non-visual ways of doing customer service over the phone, if that's what you want to do. Maybe you're really good at serving customers coffee as a blind person. What if that gives you joy and you didn't know that you were good at that because nobody let you? Nobody come up with some kind of non-visual way for you to do it. So we teach the people that they can. That's the kind of nonprofit someone needs to start. That'd be brilliant. And I'm off my soapbox.
It absolutely would be brilliant. And I predict that this is going to be one of our most popular and engaging episodes. So, go on to pennyforward.com, throw your comments in here, send us emails, pennyforward@pennyforward.com, give us a phone call, 888-332-5558. If you got something to say related to this, we'll get you on. We'll get your writing out there. We'll get your voice out there. If you got ideas, just let us know, because this is part of what we're all about.
Can you share with us, Kevin, some takeaways or some lessons learned?
Well, the lesson that I could see from Byron is that you have got to be persistent, because this thing had multiple potentials to fail. I mean, we went for quite a dry spell because of a contract and a whole thing with VR and with the way that worked. And there was literally a loss of a bunch of potential work. And so that could have failed the thing. And Byron said no. And I've learned more from watching him than anything else. Like, I am my own worst enemy in my own life and my own business, because I take everything personally and I overthink and I'm neurotic. And I'm all of these things that I know to be true about what have a lot of these characteristics that are very hard to manage when trying to start, maintain, grow, do whatever with a business. And so to watch Byron, who at least portrays not letting anything get him down, you can say, all right, look, if he can do that and deal with all of these VR folks and like these different states and getting all of this going and being able to build from something that could have almost failed, what is that cold call that I can make to that client to try to get a thing for my own work? I can watch Byron and learn from working with these students in IC Music, and then I can take and apply it to other things. And I think really what I've learned is that you cannot quit. Like, you just cannot quit. And literally, I'm saying this from the perspective of a guy who could wake up tomorrow and have that inkling to sell everything and throw in the towel. It's that easy. It's that easy to get into that space. And I think the problem with motivational speaking is we get these guys that are like way up on a mountaintop with like, I have $3 million in investments and I'm doing all these things, and you just can't quit, son. You just got to buck up, son. I'd rather hear that from the guy that almost quit yesterday. You know what I mean? And so I'm the guy that almost quit yesterday. I'm the guy that almost quit 2 days ago, whatever it is. Very easy to give up, and you can't, and we haven't. I mean, the fact that I'm sitting here talking with a studio full of gear and still doing this is because I haven't. And I may not be where I want to be yet. We're working on it. But if I feel like some days I wake up and go, man, I should just give this whole thing up because I'm not where I think I want to be, I have to think back to like all the other days that I said that and didn't do it. And it's really, really that simple. It's like the one foot in front of the other foot in front of the other foot. And Byron has gone through hell and back with this, and it is a costly, costly venture. And he has put his neck on the line more times than I can even think to make sure that he and us are working and being able to do the thing. And he has not given up. And that's the thing that I learned from our great overlord, Mr. Byron Harden.
And I'm sure that he is very proud of the way that you're representing IC Music when you're talking about it and talking about him. And our next question on the script was going to be, what advice do you have for listeners who either want to go into music or want to start their own businesses? You started talking about that already, but what else you got?
So obviously you can't quit. I'm going to say this. I'm going to get real personal. If you have mental health problems, and this is coming from somebody who has many of them, my advice is to surround yourself with the people who are going to push you to do the thing. I'm surrounded by people that believe in me more than me. How do you get people that believe in you more than you? It's surrounding yourself with people who love you. Even if you raise chickens, they believe in you more than you believe in you. They believe in your chickens more than you do. They believe in your music more than you do. And they remind you all the time. Like, don't forget, most of mental health when it comes to this stuff is being reminded what you have and who you are, what is in your have hand and not in your want hand. That's a good one I learned from J.P. Williams. Surround yourself with the people who love you, or you are likely to quit. Liz, when you moved states, and I remember you talking on Clubhouse about all the things you were doing, and I got to set up a apartment and things. And I'm sure that in that process, you did not do that by yourself. Now, you may have done a bunch of it on your own as a blind individual or whatever, but spiritually and mentally and whatever, you weren't doing that by yourself. There were people around you, whether they were helping you pack a box or reading something to you, or just being there on the phone saying, if you need anything, I know moving sucks.
Yes.
So that's the whole thing, is like, if you're doing it alone without the people who love you, you're doing it alone. And I know this sounds so hippy dippy cliche, but I'm telling you what the pandemic taught us. And it's a sense of community. I mean, Clubhouse is an absolute accessibility dumpster fire. It's worthless, and a bunch of us have abandoned the product. But when Clubhouse was at its peak was when we were all teaching each other that we needed each other. Whether we were talking about business, whether we were talking about how do I get my jaws to work, or how do I play that song? We were all doing that during the pandemic when people were shut in. And we realized that we needed each other, and that doesn't change. And so now we really hit this mental health thing, because without that, you can't run a business or you can't do a thing. And so I know this to be true. And so I have to work on it every single day.
I just thought of a question while you were talking about that. And it sort of goes like this. What do you say to the people that say, well, I'm not going to ever make enough money being like a live musician and doing $100 a night in shows, or I'm not going to be able to ever make enough money for it to be worth it for me to sell my knitting or to raise my chickens, or we keep talking about chickens. Let's talk about goats for a second.
Sure.
What about the people that say, I really love raising goats, but it's just too expensive. There's no way I can make enough money to make a living off of this. What do you say to those people in those moments where it's really hard and maybe you're making something, but it's not much?
So let me tell you where my struggle is. I do the teaching and I do the corporate musician thing fairly well. Like being able to sell myself to say, hey, we're going to come in, we're going to entertain your guests, whether it's my duo partner, Sandy and I, or whether it's me by myself, or my partners in doing dueling pianos, or whatever it is. We're going to come in and play songs for you. We're going to come in and play YMCA and Never Going to Give You Up and whatever it is that your audience wants to hear. And because we're coming in very professional and in suits and things like this, we can demand a certain price for it. right? And we're okay with that. Where I'm not okay is in all of my original artistic work. I make $18 every 3 months off of CD Baby. There are so many days where I'm like, I don't even really care if I make another record because I don't think I can make this work. So what you're asking me to talk about is literally something that I'm talking about with myself and the people around me on a daily basis, because I'm starting to pivot my career into some other things that are going to include more original music, but I've not been able to make original music work for me at all. And so I literally, the question you just asked is a question that I just asked somebody a couple days ago about booking coffee shop gigs, because I'm like, how do you even make that work? Because I don't understand. Like, my brain says, if you're going to hire me into a coffee shop and you don't know who I am and I'm going to play my unknown original music, you don't really I don't have the right to demand that much money from you because you don't know what you're getting. If I'm playing Brown Eyed Girl in a bar or for 200 business people at a resort, they know what they're getting and they know what they paid pretty high price for. So I literally have this conversation and end up in the depths of doldrums on it a lot in this household at this moment. That is the struggle with me. I do not understand quite yet where I fit as a writing, performing musician that performs music that nobody knows yet. So it really goes back to the company you keep. Sometimes part of this is failing up. And so I'm learning in this time of my life that we're going to throw something against the wall today and we're going to enjoy the journey. And we are not going to worry about if that journey comes back unrequited, because then we've added something to our lexicon of things that we know how to do that we didn't before. The problem was I was waiting for results all the time. You almost have to go into this knowing that maybe you can't make enough money right now, but knowing, like, what is the end result? What can I make money doing right now while I'm doing the other thing? And that's hard for blind people a lot. I mean, we've got, wonderful things like Fable and Audio Eye and things like this where folks are being hired to do testing, accessibility things, and it's starting to open up, but we're not quite there yet. And I think once more blind people are able to find a gainful remote set of employment for a lot of folks, especially those who are shut in rural areas where they can't get anywhere, I was one of them, maybe they can start to look at, well, okay, now that we got the bills worked out, at least for most of the part, we can now move on to what is the thing that makes us tick. Because sometimes if we're trying to figure out the thing that makes us live, we're not doing the thing that makes us tick. Trust me, I've been doing that for a couple months. All of these things are struggles for all of us. And so it really is trying to enjoy the adventure, trying to figure out what parts of this journey we can be grateful for, knowing that there are challenges, and then surrounding ourselves with people that are willing to take that with us and help at least bear some of the burden. Maybe it's emotionally or spiritually, or sometimes people are lucky to help you monetarily or transportationally, or, whatever it is.
Kevin, in sharing with us what you have about IC Music, is there anything that we have not asked you that we should know?
I just bought a very rare instrument that I will be starting to do some instructional videos on. Once I get it, it's being made.
What is it?
It's called a harpeggi. It's a stringed instrument that you press down on the strings like a piano. And we've got some branding things in the works. I've been talking to some folks who have been suggesting that I try to do a little bit of legwork to try to get a suite at the convention next year, to where I can provide a place for people to come in and play this instrument, make an appointment, play and enjoy the instrument, and do a little, networking or whatever, and try to just do it to kind of bolster who I am as a musician and as a community member, and, trying to maybe do a little bit of work for this company and make them, sell them some instruments. Who knows? We're just trying some things.
Well, that's really cool. So we're out of time. Actually, we're way over time, but how can people get in touch with you or with IC Music or with you personally, whatever you want?
You can go to my link tree at kevinreeves.net. On the IC Music front, what you want to do is you want to go to icmusic.org. If you are interested in becoming a client of ours, I'm not the guy you want to talk to. The guy you want to talk to is named Byron Harden. The phone number is on the website. The email address is on the website. icmusic.org. It's ISEE music.org.
And then for the spelling challenged, like me, spell kevinreeves.net too, would you?
KevinReeves.net. So KevinReev as in Victor ES.net.
All right. Well, thank you, Kevin, for being here. It's been really fun, and you've had some great advice to share.
I appreciate this time, and thank you guys so much. Can't wait to hear the episode.
The Penny Forward podcast is produced by Chris Peterson and Liz Botner, with assistance from Mo Carpenter, who's not here today. Audio editing and post-production is provided by Bryn Lee at superblink.org. Transcription is provided by Anne Verdine, and the music is composed and performed by Andre Louis. All of those people are blind. Penny Forward is a nonprofit organization founded and led by blind people. Through education, mentoring, and mutual support, we help blind people to navigate the complicated landscape of personal finance. We do that through our website and our app, both of which are called Penny Forward. The website is pennyforward.com, and the app is just called Penny Forward, and it's available for iOS and Android through the App Store of your choice. Check either one of those out to access our self-paced online financial education courses, our weekly members-only group chats, our monthly member meetups. We do like alliteration at Penny Forward, and our one-to-one financial counseling and education, as well as much, much more. Again, the app is called Penny Forward, and the website is pennyforward.com. And you can always reach us by email, too, by emailing pennyforward@pennyforward.com. Now, for all of us in the Penny Forward community, I'm Chris Peterson.
I'm Liz Botner.
And we hope that you have a great couple of weeks, and thank you for listening.